I'm Dave Dinkle. Today we're going to look at $135,283.91 net profit on a no-money wholesale same-day double closing. It's the student's first what I call a 100-pound wholesale deal, and as you'll see, I think there's going to be many more to come. What we're going to do first is I actually have an interview with a student, and he talks about this deal, some of the struggles he had for more than 2 years before he came into our program. At the end, I'm actually going to show you the HUD statements so you can see what a 100-pounder looks like. I'm Dave Dinkle. Tonight I'm here with Nick. We don't have any sort of script or we don't go by any kind of questions per se, but I just kind of want to delve into Nick's background and sort of how he got started. You had a rough start to begin with. It took you a while to really get some deals under your belt, correct?
Yes, it did. I would say prior to, getting with you and joining the mentorship program, I started to try to wholesale for about 2 years, and I was unsuccessful for 2 years. And I did everything I could, I was working 2 jobs and my wife was working, Christy, who, joined the mentorship program also. And we were writing 1,000 yellow letters a month after work every day and putting out bandit signs at 2:00 in the morning, trying to cold call, knock on doors. And I just hit roadblock after roadblock. And, I finally got to a point where I was going to give up. And I was just like, you know what? This isn't working. I'm going to try to actually fix and flip a house. Never picking up a hammer in my life, thinking that, okay, maybe this is the route. And Christy, funny enough, was calling on, we were kind of getting, doing a little bit of a deep dive into, hard money and transactional funding. And she actually ended up calling you. And funny enough, I believe I don't want to put words in her mouth, but I believe she was the one who, when she was talking to you, she said, after listening to her for a little bit, you were like, do you know who I am? And she's like, no. And you're like, oh, I'm Dave Dinkle. And you kind of got into the gist of what you do as a real estate investor and, wholesaler. And, that the rest was kind of history after that. We came to meet you in person and kind of went through the whole process, and it was off to the races after that.
What do you think was your big stumbling block for the first 2 years where you didn't get any deals at all? You weren't in the program then, but you're doing a lot of work. Very obviously. What do you think held you back?
Honestly, I think I was doing a lot of things that I think were working, prior to me starting to do them. I think the biggest thing was, consistency. It always goes back down to consistency, right? I think it had a lot to do with, watching a lot of YouTube videos and listening to a lot of podcasts and, trying to kind of piece together information. And I remember when we talked on the phone for the first time, you said, listen, you got a lot of things right. You're on the right path, but you just need to tweak a few things, right? And those little things that you helped me kind of tweak, helped me kind of knock down my first domino and kind of move from there. But yeah, I just think it was just too much information, trying to, throw a bunch of things in a bunch of different directions and just, letting life get in the way, right? Mm-hmm. So that's really what it came down to.
Now, you and Christy are both licensed, correct?
Oh, no, actually, I am not licensed. Yeah, Christy's licensed. I decided not to get licensed.
Okay. And all you needed was driver's license. So
Correct. That is true. That's all you need.
So we're going to talk about your recent mega deal, I'm going to call it. What sort of average profits have you had on your wholesale deals other than that?
I would say average profits are probably about 15 to 20,000.
Okay. Well, that should be average for us. Mm-hmm. That's sort of high in the industry per se, but that's okay. Now, you've actually done a couple of assignments.
Yes.
You actually did one, not this deal, but the one before that was a small enough profit. And I said to the closing agent, if you can work it out that he can assign it, let him assign it rather than me double closing it because your spread just kind of disappears.
Correct. And you know what? Everybody told me, and it's funny that you said that because they didn't tell me that. They wanted me to just double close it and get it over with because that deal was a nightmare. And my wife was telling me not to do it. The closing people were telling me not to do it. And on the day of closing, Dave, I called the buyer and I stopped the closing.
Oh, really?
And it was literally, they were at the title company getting ready to sign. And I really rolled the dice. It was definitely not something that you should do on a daily basis, but I just had a gut feeling. I knew the buyers were invested in this property. I knew, it was a solid buyer. And I just kind of worded it like, hey, listen, we have some things come up. This is what we needed to do. And I was able to stop the closing when they were literally there, and we ended up signing it and making, a couple $1,000s more than what I was made. I saw my profit just dwindle, and I'm like, no, there's money to be on the table. I'm not gonna let it fall off the table. So let's give this a shot, and that one ended up working. So I don't recommend it. But
let me talk to you about what happened in that deal. I kind of like to look at. I'm not going to call it a failure because you made money, but you had a very small spread. Did you overpay for it? Could you not sell it? What was the problem?
Correct. So it was one of those situations where unfortunately, I got my emotions kind of a little caught into it, to be honest with you. It was a referral from my wife, who had another real estate agent that was a friend of hers, who brought me the deal. She knows what I do. And it was a very distressed situation. It was, I walked into the house and there was a gentleman who was, very not well off. He was on oxygen. The place was a straight hoarder situation. And they had literally zero to their name, and we tried to do the best we could. I knew two things. One, I looked at the property appraiser and it said that it was CBS. It was not CBS. It was Frank. Of course, the property appraiser, you can never look at the face value, right? Yeah. So I ended up taking it for what she was telling me, looking at the property appraiser, and I ended up negotiating at a price, and which was, yes, too high. After going and seeing the property, throwing it out to some of my buyers on my buyers list, I did have one of my buyers say, hey, listen, I can make it work, but I need it for this amount, which was drastically lower than what I had it. So luckily, I had the relationship with the agent. I was able to make sense of it. The agent was dreading putting this on the market. She was pleading with me like, please, let's make this work. We got to figure out a way. So I went there, met the seller, build rapport with them, and really pled my case and said, hey, listen, this is what I need. And I believe I almost got, I think it was like almost a $40,000 reduction, to make the deal work. Yeah. And then I ended up having an actual buyer who had the property, and he ended up backing out, and I got another buyer for hire to make it work. It was a crazy situation. Then come to find out, after everything was said and done, they wanted a post-occupancy. So it was like the worst situation possible. They had no money to their name. The sellers were taking all the funds to buy another house. Oh. And the buyer wanted to take $10,000 and hold it in escrow, for the post-occupancy, and then come to find out they didn't even have any homeowners insurance.
Oh, wow.
So it was a whirlwind, but yes, I got it way too high, but I was able to, from a lot of the techniques that you showed me, be able to go back, renegotiate, and figure out how to make it work. And we did. So it was a good learning experience.
So the referring agent did get a commission.
Correct. Yes.
Did Christy get a little commission?
No, she did not. She did not get a commission. She took her out to lunch though, so she saved the day, but that was about it. Yeah. No commission for Christy.
Realtor loves investors now, right? She may not have before.
Oh yeah. Oh, she definitely does. That's for sure. And she's like, listen, if I'm in a sticky situation, you're going to be the one I call because you get it done. And I kept telling her, like, listen, go with me, because she wanted to get higher and best for her sellers, as she should. But I convinced her, like, hey, this is what it's going to be. And if you don't take my offer, then it's going to be getting dragged through. You're going to have a bunch of other investors that don't know what they're doing, that are going to lock up your property and back out of the contract. And I know that this is what we need to make it happen. And this is how I need to justify it. And we were able to get to the closing table. So she was very, very happy.
Good. You solved the problem and everybody was a winner.
Correct.
On that one. So how big is your buyers list?
I would say, and you're going to be disappointed in this, Dave. I would say right now, truthfully, I have probably about 150 buyers.
Okay.
On my buyers list. It's definitely something that going into these next few months is my main focus. I've been very transactional over the past year, just working on getting deals under my belt and navigating, deals. And I have picked up quite a few buyers along the way. 2020 was crazy, as we all know, with COVID. And I had 4 properties under contract getting ready to close in March of 2020, and every single deal fell through.
Oh.
And I was obviously able to, keep some of the deposit and make everything how it did. And obviously it didn't work out the way I wanted it to work out. But yeah, 2020 was pretty challenging, but there was definitely a lot of opportunity because I had some pretty good wins there also.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say my buyers list is definitely needs some attention. It needs to get up there because one thing I did learn from you is, you don't realize, between agents, between buyers, the property might not work for this person, but it will work for this person, right? And every buyer has a different perspective on a property or a different exit strategy. And you can't rule that out because I've had tons of investors tell me, no way, that I would never buy that. I would never buy that. And then sure enough, I'd have one buyer that said, hey, I'll take it. Let's go. Right. So that's the power of having a healthy buyers list.
Now, you've been in the program for a little while, but I just recently released for mentor students a separate section on how to quickly build a buyer's list. So send me an email and I'll send it over to you.
I really appreciate that, Dave.
You got to use it. Just as a quick insight, one of my students used it and increased his buyer's list from probably about 300 by over 650 the first day.
Wow.
And they're actual buyers. So he did that with one email, and I'll send that over to you and let you see what it is.
I really appreciate that. Thank you.
So tell me, let's talk about your big deal. This is 10 days ago. I think we closed it, or a week ago, something like that.
Yeah.
I did the transactional funding for it. So that's why I'm kind of in on the deal. Sometimes students typically do 2 or 3 deals or 4 deals. I'll do transactional funding for them, and then I don't hear from them because they got their own money and they're off and running, turned loose. But occasionally, as with this deal, you came to me and said, I need transactional funding, and I did it. So what did you pay for it?
We paid $250,000 for it.
Okay. And where did it come from? Was it like a probate or a referral? Or
it was actually a referral, and it was a referral through social media. Just a friend of a friend who, who's seen me posting up my transactions and my deals and reached out to me and knows what I do and said, hey, listen, I have this person that we know who lives in the area and they need to move on from their home and they're not in the best situation. One of the gentlemen was not in the greatest of health and there was a lot of issues with the home. So, it was actually just a referral from someone who reached out to me.
So typically very motivated sellers don't negotiate price as such. They negotiate a solution, kind of get me out of here. Is that what you found out to be the issue here? He wanted the convenience of just getting out?
It was 100% the convenience, Dave. You're right. He's just like, listen, I need to move on. He's like, I got to get out of this situation. I'm not in the best of health. And, what do we need to do to make this happen and make it as easy as possible for me?
And you did.
Yes, I did. I did. Okay.
So how did you find your buyer?
So actually through networking. So it was actually at the Mathis twins, Jeremy and Joshua. I became pretty good friends with them over the years. They're great guys. I talk to them probably on a weekly basis, both of them. Gave me a lot of insight on things and they're just great human beings. And I actually went to a networking event of theirs and they reached out to me and said, hey, come down or, we're going to meet you, introduce you to a lot of guys in the industry. And I ended up meeting this gentleman and, we ended up kicking it off. And funny enough, I actually reached out to him a couple of times on social media and he blew me downstream. And, finally I met him in person and we had some good camaraderie and said, he's like, hey, if you have some, send it to me. And it was probably about 2 or 3 weeks later, I said, hey, let me give you a shot. I got a deal here for you. We had the contract signed, I would say within an hour and escrow within 3.
And how much did you sell it for?
We sold it for $400,000.
So almost 150 spread in it.
Correct.
But you had some expenses. Did you have commissions? I didn't look at the second page of the HUD.
No, there was no commissions. But what we did was we wanted to make sure that, I did have a JV in the deal, which was actually that guy who was the buyer. So I, ended up giving him about, I would say a $15,000 JV, which, he kind of tried to negotiate the price on me, but I knew I had a good deal. So I said, no, you're going to tack it on, because he wanted me to give me 5-10 grand off the HUD. I said, no, you could tack on and we'll work it. But it was a solid deal for everybody. Everybody got, a good situation with this. But yes, I made sure that we did right by the seller and he walked away with a clean $250,000. So we took care of a lot of the fees associated with closing. The buyer paid all the closing costs, but we paid some of the doc stamps and stuff like that to make sure that he walked with his 250 clean.
So part of the negotiation was your end buyer paid your closing costs, or most of them.
Correct.
Yeah, which is always important, especially when you're doing a double closing, so you don't have to pay twice, so to speak. Any insights into that, or is that pretty much the story?
Yeah, no, that's pretty much the story. It was, I'll tell you, when it hit my account, I was pretty blown away. I was just like, okay. And you know what's funny? Last time that we spoke, I think you really fired me up, because when I told you about what the profit was on the deal, you literally responded with, "Is that it?" I was like, you know what? I got to work harder. So this deal, I think, made up for that last one.
These 100-pounders, I call them, are life changers, and they really make a difference. What I am seeing is a lot of, I noticed that today I had 2 closings, and both of them were over $40,000 profits. The profits have really increased substantially for wholesalers if you know what you're doing. If you don't know what you're doing, you're being squeezed by not having enough end buyers. Typically, it is the problem.
Right.
So any comments or last best wishes to anybody out there that's thinking about doing this?
Yeah. Listen, it really, 2 things. It's not easy. Okay. You have to be consistent. You cannot let life get in the way. And you have to have someone, a support system, a team around you. It's extremely important. I'm truly blessed that, the Dave and Jim and Viju and Pedro and Nancy, have came into my life and my family's life. I've learned so much. And it's funny, every time I see, there's so much information out there nowadays, right? And you see a lot of gurus online and a lot of people pitching certain things. And every time I think about say, oh, I want to do that, or I want to throw my eggs in some of that basket, I always take it back to the fundamentals and what you've taught me over the years, and it works. And we get deals done. And, I have a deal right now that I'm working on that is going to be, probably almost a 6-figure deal that I'm working on, that I've had over the past year. There was one deal that I chased down for about 4 or 5 months. And it shows you how important the follow-up is. And that's something that you ingrained in us for, the whole time I've been with you in the mentorship program. And I followed up with this one property for 4 or 5 months. I would not let this go because I knew I could make it work. And that one deal ended up turning into 3 deals. And we ended up getting that under contract. And the real estate agent told me, listen, the seller has 2 other properties. He wants to sell those 2. Do you want them? And I said, absolutely. And now he called me back again and told me, hey, I have another one for you. Same seller. We want to make it work. And I know it's going to be a big one. So
I think the misconception on the part of realtors that don't understand investors is they're, bottom feeders and all kinds of crazy stuff. But the reality is we solve problems that other people can't. You can't go to a conventional lender and ask for a loan, and time elements are critical. That's where we shine. That's what we do.
Correct. You have to be a problem solver. You have to go above and beyond, and it takes real hard work. And, you can't let life get in the way. And I personally have let life get in the way, and it's slowed down my progression and where I'd like to be. But I know, I'm working on, at this point, like I told you, getting ready to hire some VAs and scale my business. And now I'm confident enough that I can train, some VAs and get them working with real estate agents and get them on the right path. And I'm working on duplicating John Aaron's business. That's what I'm doing. So I'll be calling you for some tips.
Okay. So your goal is to do a deal a day.
Exactly. That's the plan. I'm going to shoot for Forbes 40 under 40.
Okay. All right. Well, I can't say enough to say thank you. I appreciate it. Say hi to Christy and the baby. Not a baby anymore, but say hi. And thank you very much. Appreciate it.
No problem, Dave. Thank you. And tell Nan I said hi, and I'll be talking to you soon. We'll see you in January. All right?
Okay, great. Thanks again.
Right. Have a great one. Bye.
So here we go. We're going to look at the HUD statements. As I said, for people who have been with me before on these journeys through the HUD statements, you'll remember that what I do is I cut the HUD in half. Now it can be a CD or closing disclosure, an ALTA statement, a simple settlement statement, whatever it's called by the closing agent. I cut them in half in essence if I need more room to show them. But here is the top half of the first leg of the HUD, the A to B, or in this case, Nick is purchasing it from the seller. As he mentioned in the video, he paid $250,000 for it. There is no other pertinent information on the top half of the A to B HUD. So what I'm going to do is skip to the second half. Most important part here is, first of all, no earnest money deposit. Now I go over this all the time, and I still have people that say you can't do it, it's not legal, it's all of this stuff, but yet I've showed it to you literally tons and tons of times. There's 3 ways to do it legally, so on and so forth. So the only other important part of this HUD is frankly the $259,318.75 that was needed as cash to close. You can see it here, it says cash, from what's called the borrower. This is the buyer, whether he pays cash or he takes money from a lender. It's called a borrower because that's the way it's been done with the HUD statement. So this is the second leg, or the B to C closing. In other words, now Nick has become the seller, and as Nick mentioned to you, he sold it for $400,000. When I cut the HUD statement in half, ironically, I cut it in such a way that I included the earnest money deposit from the end buyer on this part of it, but I'll show it to you in the second half, the lower half of the B to C HUD in a moment. There's no other really important parts on the B to C HUD except on the bottom half. So this is the bottom half. There's a $10,000 earnest money deposit I showed you above. This is the right way to do it. You get a larger earnest money deposit from your end buyer than you're putting up. If you say to me, Dave, you can't do that, they don't want to put up any money, find other buyers. That's the answer to your problems. You're not making big enough profits because you don't have enough buyers to begin with. If you notice just below the $10,000 earnest money deposit, $340,000, meaning this buyer got a loan for $340,000. Down here at the bottom, he had to bring to closing $59,000. See, it says cash from borrower. He had to bring in almost $60,000 to close. The rest was in the form of a loan. The other important part here is that's the transactional funding that I received back. I got my money back. There's no money in this transaction. There's no earnest money deposit. So if you say to me, Dave, how can it be no money? Here it is, transactional funding, no earnest money deposit. The bottom line on this, that's the net profit, $135,283.91. And if you think, man, that's a lightning strike, it is. But there are plenty of my students that have been struck by that kind of lightning more than one time. And you'll hear clues to how that's been done in Nick's presentation. If you didn't get it, go and play it back again. Listen carefully to what he tells you about the things that he did to get to this point in the transaction. I'm Dave Dinkle. I wish you limitless success in all that you do. And I would appreciate it if you guys would give me a thumbs up, or I don't know what you do. I'm not big on that stuff, but I understand that it may help. So again, limitless success in all that you do.